Welcome, everybody, to the Liberty Report. I am your host, Alex Newman. Thanks so much for joining us here on Patriot TV. We appreciate you very much. Folks, there's so much happening in Washington, D.C. It's a whirlwind, and virtually everything I've seen has been really encouraging to me. But one thing jumped out at me, and I said, wait a minute here. You probably saw it too, and you might have thought the same thing. Stargate? Personalized mRNA injections for cancer? Sorry, but after the last few years, I don't want any talk of mRNA injections into me or my family. In fact, I don't even want to hear about it. But we have a very special guest joining us today to break this down and so much more. The Dr. Robert Malone. Yes, the Dr. Robert Malone, famous, infamous virologist, immunologist, internationally recognized co-creator of the mRNA technology that we are talking about here. I can't imagine a better guest to join us for this. Dr. Malone, thank you for joining us. I won't pretend to understand this, but I want to play the clip real quick about this mRNA thing, and then I want to come back to you and get your comments on what this all means.
It turns out, I'll be quick, all of our cancers, cancer tumors, little fragments of those tumors float around in your blood. So you can do early cancer detection. If you can do using AI, you can do early cancer detection with a blood test. And using AI to look at the blood test, you can find the cancers that are actually seriously threatening the person. So we can, again, cancer diagnosis using AI has the promise of just being a simple blood test. Then beyond that, once we gene sequence that cancer tumor, you can then vaccinate the person, design a vaccine for every individual person to vaccinate them against that cancer. And you can make that vaccine, that mRNA vaccine, you can make that robotically, again, using AI in about 48 hours. So imagine early cancer detection, the development of a cancer vaccine for your particular cancer aimed at you, and have that vaccine available in 48 hours. This is the promise of AI and the promise of the future.
I'm of the
Oh, wow. That is some wild stuff there, Dr. Malone. What were we hearing, and should we be expecting mRNA personalized concoctions coming soon?
I'll answer the last one, no.
Okay, good.
So what you heard was another one of the tech bros, the head of Oracle, basically responding to the issue. Let me just take a step back, because it's important that we get this right and that we don't, hammer Mr. Trump for things that he doesn't deserve. Clearly, President Trump is deeply committed to the addressing the problem of enabling advanced artificial intelligence superiority in the United States. And the threat here, of course, is the current dominance of China, the CCP, in this space of artificial intelligence. The risk here with AI is that we move to general artificial intelligence, where if we set up this kind of a massive capability, such as being proposed here for $500 billion, remember, $500 billion here, $500 billion there, and pretty soon it's real money in DC. So they want $500 billion. According to Elon Musk, they've only raised about 10 billion of the 500 they need. And they apparently came to Mr. Trump, who absolutely wants to see advances in artificial intelligence. It's clearly one of his priorities. And they pitched him that they wanted to build this massive, what's essentially a data center, to enable a advanced supercomputing artificial intelligence capability. Now, let's set that aside. It appears that in the presentation for this, consequent to the executive order, they were asked to come up with some sort of example that the common person could identify with or understand about how this would benefit the likes of you and I. And remember that Larry, who is doing the talking there and lecturing at us, is not a biologist in any way, shape, or means. This is kind of akin to Bill Gates and his activities in World Health, when the guy has not even graduated with an undergraduate degree. He's certainly not a biologist. He's certainly not a physician. That's akin to the head of Oracle lecturing on us on cancer vaccines. So somebody seems to have primed him with a very simplistic case of how this could be used to address a real world problem that everybody can recognize. That, remember, Joe Biden repeatedly said he was going to address with his cancer moonshot and has failed. He spent a lot of money on the cancer moonshot, and there's nothing really to show for it. So this is really almost pitch perfect for Donald Trump. It combines the elements of Operation Warp Speed and what Mr. Trump sees as one of his big successes is the advancement of the mRNA platform technology and deployment for COVID very rapidly. So Mr. Trump, President Trump, sees OWS and RNA vaccines as one of his big successes. And multiple people have tried to talk to him about this, but he's dug in on this. It's not up for negotiation. In his world, this was one of his major contributions to world history. So Larry seems to have pitched Donald Trump on artificial intelligence using a TV show nomenclature, right? Just like was done with Operation Warp Speed and Star Trek. Here we have Stargate. And he's added in, Trump wants AI. So that's the core. That is what the Stargate core is. And then he has pitched cancer, early detection, diagnosis, and treatment using mRNA. So he's combined a whole lot of things in this pitch that hit hot buttons for Donald Trump. Now let's talk about the underlying thesis that he's proposing, which is grossly naive. Through my entire career, people have been, that's 40 years plus now, in molecular biology, virology, gene transfer, vaccines, and cancer. I started off in breast cancer. The idea of picking up peripheral circulating tumor cells, which has been out there for at least a decade, probably 2 decades now, as early diagnostic capability, that's out there, and to some extent that's done, but it turns out that a lot of tumors don't do that. A subset of tumors do. Okay, so number one, Larry is pitching an idea that actually doesn't have solid footing in science. You can't detect all cancers using peripheral blood. We don't really need artificial intelligence in order to do that. It's already being done. Now, he goes straight from that to what's essentially single cell sequencing. He says, well, we can sequence the tumor. Well, yeah, if you have the tumor, but if it's still at an early phase and you're only detecting it using peripheral blood cells, then you got to sort those cells. That in and of itself is a major challenge because they're relatively rare. Otherwise, the person would be in advanced stage cancer. So they've got to develop a technology that's totally different from artificial intelligence. That's flow cytometry, essentially, and cell sorting. And that tech has been out for 30 years at least now, too, and it's not that good and that powerful. It does a lot of wonderful stuff, but you got to sort a long time to get the cells that you need to do the sequencing, particularly single cell sequencing, at enough scale so that you have reproducibility. But that technology is ongoing and people are trying that. Now let's talk about cancer vaccines. People have been trying to develop autologous cancer vaccines for humans and animals. Again, my entire career. This is old ideas, old tech that's just being tarted up with some fancy new words, artificial intelligence and mRNA. Now, can you develop custom vaccines for humans for cancer? It turns out the problem is not identifying the antigen. The problem is that cancer is basically a disease of immune system failure. Cancer cells evolve to escape our immune system pressures. And we haven't solved that problem. We've made some advances, but we don't really understand completely how this happens. And it happens in a unique way, essentially, with each single patient. So the problem is not identifying the antigen that you could jam into some magic machine and produce a custom vaccine, which, by the way, the FDA makes that whole thesis extremely difficult, customized medical products in general. And the idea that you can do this by just using a fancy whiz bang, search the genome of the cancer cell and look for the mutant proteins and then put those into a process to manufacture an RNA that would produce them. I'm sorry, that kind of thinking is at least 20 years old and it doesn't work. What does need to be done is to use artificial intelligence to try to understand this extremely complex interaction between your immune system and cancer. That would be helpful. There's a lot of ways we could use artificial intelligence to improve human health. But this gadget, this kind of fancy words, and sexy concepts all strung together, that's hype. That Mr. Trump has basically been subjected to a pitch that makes no sense in terms of the underlying biology. Maybe someday, once we figure out how the immune system is interacting with the tumor cell, and we can figure out how to fix those issues of cancer immune suppression, then we might be able to go towards this. Then there's the cost. Customized mRNA vaccine for everybody that has a tumor that's detectable early on. We're talking serious six-figure numbers for each single one of those things. Then he appears to be talking about taking this and then making some sort of a universal vaccine. He says vaccines for everybody for that tumor. Okay, that's just flat out BS. That is not going to work because we are incredibly diverse in our immune system's ability to process proteins and present them. That's a good news thing. Okay. That's why humans won't all get wiped out by whatever the latest plague is, because we have a lot of diversity in our immune responses. But the idea that you could do this, even, just as a fundamental concept, is grossly naive. This is a great example of what happens when you get somebody that has made a bunch of money in the tech sector again and again and again. These guys think that that makes them geniuses in everything. And I don't know who pitched this to Larry. Larry is absolutely dug in that mRNA vaccines absolutely work. They're safe and effective. And by the way, he's also dug in on transhumanism. He's one of these Silicon Valley guys that believes that we should eventually be able to upload our consciousness or avatar onto some sort of a server and give rise to some form of immortality. This is
I want to pick up. I want to pick up right there on the other side of this break, because I think it is so critical for people to understand the nexus between some of these ideas and transhumanism. So, folks, stay with us. We're going to be right back on the other side of this break with more from Dr. Robert Malone.
Attention business owners and entrepreneurs, Patriot TV is launching a brand new TV series showcasing American-made products, and your business could be featured. Whether you sell your products online on Etsy or Shopify and dream of reaching millions of viewers on smart TVs like Samsung, Sony, TCL, and LG, or apps like Roku, Android, and Apple TV, this is your chance. We're searching for US-based businesses offering all types of products and services proudly made in the USA. If you've ever wanted to showcase your products on TV like QVC or the Home Shopping Network, now's your opportunity. Support our American economy, grow your business, and be seen by loyal Patriot viewers across the country. Know someone with a business or have a business yourself? Don't miss out. Contact us at supportingpatriots.com today. Be a guest on this new exciting TV series. Let's put your American-made products in the spotlight.
Welcome back to the Liberty Report. Alex Newman, your host here, folks. Thanks for staying with us over the break. What a fascinating discussion with Dr. Robert Malone. Before we get back to the issue of transhumanism and the nexus with these mRNA concoctions, I do want to remind you to get over to patriot.tv/Newman. That's our fan page. You'll be able to sign up to become a Patriot Defender member. You get a 10% discount when you use the promo code Newman. You get access to all kinds of exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, and some really special discounts in our Patriot TV store. Also, you'll support the work that we're doing. General Flynn and Alex Newman and the great folks here at Patriot TV. We can't carry this all on our own. We need your help. We need your buy-in. And we hope you will check it out. Patriot.tv/Newman for all kinds of incredible stuff. Now, before we went to break, we were talking with Dr. Robert Malone about this mRNA technology, artificial intelligence, Larry Ellison, the head of Oracle, and the nexus with transhumanism. Dr. Malone, I've been very concerned about this transhumanist movement for many, many years. I've seen InQtel and Michael Crow over in Arizona, and Yuval Noah Harari, and all these big wigs promoting this idea that humankind should transcend its biology. We should merge with AI. In fact, Elon Musk said, I think we were going to become obsolete if we refuse to merge with AI. How does all this fit together?
So there's a school of thought of true believers that are out at the edge in the technology space. We're talking about computer technology or information technology that are fully bought in to the concepts that, as Yuval Harari puts it, man is God now. We no longer need God. We have become gods. And we are destined now as a species to become obsolete. That's the thesis. It is fundamentally anti-human. But they believe that the future of humanity, and this relates to, colonizing Mars and the universe. They believe that the future here is that the biologic human is obsolete, and that what makes us human in terms of our souls, I guess, can be transferred into a digital space and exist there in an immortal state. In other words, we no longer can die. And if those that there's intermediate steps that they are projecting in this progression, which relates in part to the idea that we will have these implantable electrodes like Musk is working on, or other technology implanted in our brains that will allow us to directly interface with the digital domain. And what at that point might be general AI, which is predicted to far exceed, essentially be the equivalent of an IQ of 1,000 or more. And so we must interface with this digitally, this mega intelligence in their view of the world. And if we don't, we will functionally become pets. We will be subjugated to some category akin to animals in the zoo, and as biologic humans that are not interfacing with the digital machine world. This has huge overtones of the Terminator and all of that science fiction domain. So the belief is that we have no choice. If we do this, if we don't do this, we'll become obsolete. If we do this, it will enable the bright, brilliant future of space exploration and colonization that is the birthright of not man, but this new species that will be enabled through these investments in, among other things, massive artificial intelligence capabilities. And that anybody who opposes this is essentially a Luddite, that this is self-evident. And it's self-evident that man is now God. We no longer need to acknowledge or even conceive of a higher authority. And we have become that higher authority, and we must progress along this evolutionary path to becoming transhuman, to basically merge with machines. And that's where these guys, it's like a cult. They really sincerely believe that this is the future. And it's coming out of this technology elite. And it's one of the issues with Elon. And I'm afraid that Donald Trump is rather enamored of this. Often you'll see that the people that are really strong proponents of this are, let's say, later in life, quite wealthy, and looking at the fact that they are personally mortal and seeking some sort of an out. That's my opinion. This is deeply Freudian, what's going on. And it's, another example of the consequences of, enabling these multi-billionaire, slash trillionaire um, uh, oligarchs to dominate all the dialogue and the thinking around what it is to be human and what it is to be ethical and what is the future of humanity.
Yeah. And these are really profound questions that I don't think should be left to, as you described them, older guys with a lot of money. These are something that all of us ought to be thinking about and talking about rather than just allowing us to be led in this direction. Dr. Malone, we've only got about 5 minutes left, and there's so many other things I want to ask you about. Your new book, War Enforcing the New World Order, just a brilliant breakdown of the way we are psychologically abused and terrorized and manipulated by these people seeking this drastically different vision of the world. But it seems to me, at least, like Donald Trump is at least putting a dent in it. We're out of the World Health Organization. We're getting a lot of these people who were in the federal government advancing this. They're now frozen. Some of them I think are going to pay some consequences here. What do you make of what Donald Trump has done in his first few days? And is this a significant obstacle, if you will, to this push for the new system that these tyrants are trying to build?
Well, as they like to say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And our first clear signals about that are coming from the Davos meeting that's currently ongoing right now, which President Trump addressed virtually, essentially did a Skype call with the World Economic Forum. You have a lot of the key leaders of both the European Union, Ursula von der Leyen, Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum, and many others are now acknowledging that the very election of Donald Trump has basically killed or significantly damaged the New World Order planning that they have had in place for decades. This is huge. To underscore it, it's not just jabber. And you got to listen to Donald Trump's address. We're currently transcribing it and we'll be coming out with a summary as well as links to the transcript and the video in probably tomorrow's Substack if anybody wants to read about that. But it really puts a stake in the heart of this. He calls out the climate change green agenda. He calls out all kinds of the things that the likes of you and I have been talking about now for years. And he says, we're going to have none of this, basically. So is this really having an impact? Apparently, the attendance at the Davos meeting this year is way, way down. They have a lot of empty seats. And the leading indicator for how things are going in Davos always is the utilization of high-end prostitutes, which I understand are now down by 60%. So that's a clear indicator of what's going on at Davos. The air seems to have been let out of the tires and let out of the tires of the European Council in a significant way. And the next question, and obviously the World Health Organization is busy whining. We need to take out our tiniest violins right now, and because of the withdrawal of the money. And next up, I think, is likely to be some reconsideration about NATO and the structure of NATO and who's contributing to NATO and who's in command of NATO. I think that is the next pin that has to fall in Mr. Trump's reevaluation of this strong movement towards a one world government that has been so actively supported by the Biden-Harris administration and the Obama administration.
Very exciting times, and I agree 100% with your assessment. Dr. Malone, we're down to just 2 minutes. Give us the 30-second version. Fauci being pardoned. Was that the right thing to do? Why pardon the guy if he didn't do anything wrong? And is there a way around that, do you suppose?
So latest news, apparently just minutes ago, the President Trump has now finally rescinded Tony Fauci's incredibly expensive personal security detail provided by the government. Uh, in terms of this proactive, retroactive uh, pardon for somebody who has not been charged with any crimes, there's a bunch of stuff around that that's really fishy. The start date for this retroactive pardon for unknown crimes coincides with the start date for Hunter Biden's clemency. And it appears to align with the early moments in our intervention in Ukraine. And the issue that's mentioned in that context is, why would it go back to that date? And was Tony Fauci in some way involved in those Ukrainian biolabs? And did we have gain of function research going on there that Tony was involved in supervising or funding? The thing that worries me most about all of this is the precedent that's been set, and it's yet to be tested in by the Supreme Court. I think eventually it will, whether presidential pardon power granted by the Constitution is actually this broad. This is really an abuse of power, as the Democrats had said when they thought that Donald Trump was going to do it as he was leaving in his prior term. It is an abuse of power. It creates a situation in which a administration can act in a lawless fashion and expect to be absolved of any crimes. So this is akin to the CIA's capabilities offshore, but now anything that an administration does can be absolved as the president is heading out the door. And it sets an international precedent for virtually any administration to take this same stance. Furthermore, it sets things up so that our adversaries can point to this and say, America is a lawless country.
Yeah.
They do not follow the rule of law. The diplomatic international impact of all of this, I'm sure, was not considered. This is blowback. And it is what worries me the most, because we've set a precedent now that lawlessness is acceptable and clemency can be granted by any administration as they head out the door.
It's very, very troubling. Dr. Malone, thank you so much for joining us today. We are out of time. The book is War: Enforcing the New World Order. You can get it anywhere good books are sold. Again, Dr. Malone, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your very insightful analysis. I hope we can talk to you again very soon.
Thank you, Alex.
Absolutely. All right, folks. That's all we have time for today here on the Liberty Report, but share this with your friends. Get this message out there. There's a lot of fear about the various things that we discussed today, a lot of misinformation. So get this out there, share it with your friends, share it with your legislators. And until next time, thanks for watching, and God bless you all.